Santorini volcano quakes, alarming silence of earthquakes in the Aegean. This is the latest update and warnings. And we've been given an astonishing image of the square waves all across the Aegean Sea. These are a very ominous sign of something happening, that everyone has to get out of the water immediately. But of course, ships are still sailing these areas. The silence of earthquakes in the Aegean. No magnitude 5 earthquakes occur in the Aegean on February 20th, 21st. And on February 21st, there was not a single magnitude 4 earthquake, because they've been going on for over a month now. For narrow-minded people, the fact that we no longer see earthquakes is a reason to officially rejoice and get up again and throw in the confetti, to dance and finally have a little fun dancing on the green grass under a palm tree, picking bananas to peel. But this silence, this no wind blowing, the silence of earthquakes is an extremely worrying sign. For those who know elemental geology, and serious scientists, seismologists now sit on burning coals waiting anxiously. Even the uneducated but wise Indians were more cautious. If they saw unusual silence in the dense forest, they sounded the alarm, because this unnatural silence was the indication, the prelude to the enemy surprise attack. What danger did the birds of the dense forest see and fall silent? Something scared them, they thought. They had become even more alarmed and worried now, and are announcing that an earthquake of 6 to 6.3 magnitude at least will occur very soon, which could clear up the whole situation that has dragged on for such a long time with the Santorini volcano, which had a very super eruption, a large VEI-7 super eruption in 1600 BC, and a lot of eruptions since then. Now, however, while this is happening to optimistic or pessimistic scientists, let's look and see and take a look at the visionaries and the Baba Vangas forecasters to see if we can learn something useful from there. Let's start with the fact that about a week ago, Patrick Felton was not lazy and took the trouble to make a beautiful 3D model of the local volcanic system of Santorini volcano. This 3D model was made with elements and data collected in the beginning, in the first days of February. Back then, everything was exactly like this. The upper magma chamber located at a depth of about 5 kilometers, it's about 2.5, 3 miles down. And the lower magma chamber was located at a depth of 10 miles down, that's 6 miles down. And even deeper, something like a third magma chamber is faintly visible at the top of the plume, and upwards formation of magma flows feeding the magma, which is also the hidden but dynamic main feeder of all the upper chambers. This entire volcanic structure extends to a depth of about 100 kilometers, 60 miles, and by earthquakes, proven by earthquakes of magnitude 4.5 Richter magnitude, and at depths of shown in the figures. All these scientific significant earthquakes that occurred February 2025 show approximately roughly the outline of a mantle plume when viewed from above. However, Mr. Patrick built his volcanic model from February 8th, and it now is already February 22nd, and we can say that the upper magma chamber as well as the lower one have expanded significantly all these days, as indicated by the seismic events towards the northeast of Santorini, towards the island of Amorgos, that's towards the northeast of the island of Santorini. And that is where this invisible process is now taking place. The volcanic beast has expanded northeast, and in its path has literally melted and crushed any solid rock it found in front of it. And we, through seismographs, receive the messages of this process of rock crushing as seismic small or large events. We also believe that it's no longer correct to distinguish one magma chamber from another. No magma chamber, everything has become unified. The melt, the hot fiery lava has crushed everything at a depth of 15 to 5 kilometers, and now it seems that it has formed a huge volcanic complex which contains a mixture of hot, fiery melt and pieces of solid rock. That is why there are no more strong earthquakes. That's why the earthquake stopped and silence has fallen. The melt and fiery magma has melted everything. It has nothing more to crush down there in the bowels. It's broken everything that was to break. It overcame them and crushed them, every crushing of solid rock with the ferocious pressure of magma and the extremely high temperature we perceived as a seismic event through seismographs. The situation that now prevails in the volcano resembles a pot in which porridge is boiling for the whole poor family to eat, and from above this pot is covered with a steel lid, and its contents, the porridge, are simmering on low heat. The temperature in the hearth is not enough to throw off the lid and overflow the porridge, so the lid will only gurgles and rattles occasionally. Well, in the volcanic pot from the bottom of the Aegean, where everything is boiling, this cap is a piece of rock 30 kilometers in diameter and about 5 kilometers thick. Up to that point, the fiery rivers of magma have reached at a depth of about 5 kilometers below the bottom of the Aegean, according to the solid evidence provided by the cluster of seismic events. The boiling magma is not in a position, does not yet have the power of high temperature and pressure to blow up this rocky cap, its dome, and this is somewhat good and comforting. The bottom of the Aegean proves to be resistant. It still withstands and defends itself. There's hope that there will be no strong upward convection transport flow from the fiery magma mantle, and thus the earthquake swarm will gradually weaken until it's zero, little by little, and when we will be spared the great calamity for the time being. However, this perspective is a very, very optimistic view. Things could be or become and develop much worse. So let's see how that could be possible. Let's keep in mind the square waves all throughout the Aegean that are making the rounds in the media. In our imaginary model in which we liken the underwater volcano to a pot in which wheat heat porridge is boiling, if the lid of the pot is now made of steel, it's assumed that we place a plastic lid to see what will happen for a short time. As long as the plastic holds up, everything goes well. But as the plastic lid heats up from the high temperature of the boiling pot, the plastic will begin to soften like plasticine, and in the end the lid will lose its shape and fall into the boiling porridge, that is, into the fiery magma. This is approximately the process that could happen to the rocky dome above the plume, that is, the top of the volcano. At some point, the fiery melt will either expand to a greater extent, increasing the width of the rocky dome, or the dome itself will lose its strength, its cohesion from the cracks and the high temperature of the magma, and then this entire rocky dome, the cover and the lid, will collapse into the mantle at one point or another. Then the seawater will rush into the volcanic hole, and it will cause such a big explosion that its crack will be heard even in Australia. Okay? The second case is also possible but undesirable. The increase in the force of convection transportation of the melt will also be rapid, so strong that it will shake the lid of the rocky dome that now covers the volcano's cauldron into the air. Then the initially solid stone lid of the dome, whose strength will have decreased due to the terrifying pressure of the magma, which comes out of the bowels of the Earth's mantle, and the extremely high temperature, will simply blow up in the air, and then not only will the explosion, be heard in Australia, but the smoke of the explosion will also be seen in the form of volcanic ash, which will fall in the form of incessant thick snow and deadly. But what makes us believe that such gigantic phenomena, which are naturally undesirable, can happen? Why do we have all negative thoughts instead of throwing it into carefreeness and fun? Well, finally, with all these destructionists, many will say, the tourist season is approaching, and tourists, if they hear all this, will be scared and will leave and will not come, like migratory birds for other beautiful places, and above all, quietly and safely. Why is there a possibility that something so terrifying, such an epic event could happen? Answer: because the Santorini volcano has a very burdened historical past, unique in history, and the present indications and circumstances, even the most general global indications, are worrying. Everything that's known about the Minoan explosion can be read on Wikipedia. There are truly terrible things described there. However, as a recent archaeological excavation and its findings by Turkish archaeologists in the depths of Asia Minor showed what Wikipedia describes as a very light and frivolous version. In the Minoan explosion, incredible events took place, which we are only now beginning to discover, which the first victim, of course, being the destruction of a brilliant prehistoric civilization, the Minoan civilization of ancient Crete. In Turkey, there is a site called Tepecik Siftlik Mound, located east of the Menlendez Mountains, 1 kilometer east of Siftlik, Niğde province, Turkey. The hill fortress, the object of these excavations, has a diameter of 200 meters, that's 600 feet, height of 4 to 5 meters, where the local Turkish archaeologists dig and dig, trying to find evidence and proof of their Turkish presence in this area in the very old Neolithic ancient years. But no matter how deep, they find nothing to indicate that Turks once lived there. But their only idea is to finally find something Turkish there. It's very entertaining and funny, since during the Peloponnesian War, 431 BC to 404 BC, between Athens and Sparta, no one and anywhere in the world had heard that there were any people or tribe called Turks. And since this ancient settlement of Tepecik was much older than the Spartan hero King Leonidas, 480 BC, it's possible that these inhabitants of Tepecik, when they lived there, were contemporaries of the pharaohs of Egypt. But let's not interfere, let's not grow where we're not sown, and let's leave the Turkish archaeologists alone to do their job conscientiously and dig deeper again. And they have already dug several meters into the length and depth, and let's respect their findings. Well, the most important findings that the archaeologists found was, of course, not the presence of Turks in the area, but something else shocking. The archaeological findings showed that this prehistoric Neolithic settlement one day was suddenly covered under a large thickness of volcanic ash, and so they remained, people and buildings, as if embalmed altogether for many centuries until our days, until this dig revealed this. And when this ash was analyzed in scientific laboratories, it was proven to come from the Santorini volcano from the time of the ancient Great Minoan explosion around 1600 BC. It was a VI7. Therefore, that the VI8 is the biggest that can happen. Therefore, then, one can easily calculate the distance between Tepecik and Santorini. Thus, you find that the distance is about 300 kilometers, but not even this great distance saved the ancient Neolithic hill fort from the last day of Pompeii, Santorini destruction. The houses that were covered and buried up to the roof, and the people up to the neck, for such a huge emission of volcanic ash, which released such large quantities of pyroclastic materials from the eruption of Santorini volcano to hit a location 300 kilometers away. This means that the Great Minoan explosion must have been much larger than this commonly believed and recorded in encyclopedias. We would not be able to not be at all surprised if layers of thick volcanic ash 3 feet thick were found in Italy and the Crimea by archaeologists. And now the video from the Aegean Sea, the square waves. This is really, really frightening. This paradoxical sight was seen by Turkish sailors February 21st, 2025 in the eastern Aegean Sea. That's, of course, close to the Turkish coast. The crossing square waves. The phenomenon of square waves, which occurs when opposing waves formed by wind currents blowing from different directions intersect, is a characteristic phenomenon that often appears on the Waigamata coast of the Hauturu Island, New Zealand. But now this paradoxical phenomenon was also observed in the eastern Aegean Sea by Turkish sailors, which they filmed. These are the Wangamatta crossing waves on Hautoro Island, New Zealand, now in the days which square waves are now also appearing in the Aegean Sea. Today, countries and people are not surprised by square waves. What they see, the surprise here is something else, is the very location in which they appear. The paradoxical square waves are formed when the wind interferes with the sea currents, which happens regularly in some parts of the world, but this phenomenon has never happened before in the Aegean Sea. It's something unprecedented, and if such waves have appeared there, it means that the sea currents of the Aegean have changed their behavior. And what could be the thing that could be changing the behavior of these currents at this particular time period? What and who is the main subject, the cause? What is meow meow doing to the tiles? In other words, whatever meows, of course, is a cat. So it could be that something's happening underneath. A Russian Christian woman, Natalia Gubida, had a dream of being saved on the Cypress Hill. We heard and saw another interesting video yesterday. Natalia Gubida's channel. Natalia, the Latin name Natalia, comes from the word Natalie Domini, means Christmas. Natalia is a Christian and calls herself the Bride of Christ. This is a sensitive girl who has already predicted many things correctly and accurately, and in the video, 11 plus minutes, she talks about her recent personal dream about a tsunami that she saw while she was asleep, a vision. In other words, what surprised her the most were the characteristic cypress trees growing on the mountains in which Natalia tried to find shelter to hide and be saved from the tsunami waves. These are the ones she saw in her dream. The map shows the geographical areas in which the cypress trees grow and thrive according to Natalia's dreams. That's exactly where the irrational and with every reservation possibility of tsunami hitting the cypress trees grow. So let's stay tuned and let's follow the rapid developments of events. Now, the miraculous rescue of Auguste Siparis in Martinique in 1902, the only one who survived out of 30,000 residents after a volcanic eruption. This was a solitary confinement cell that saved Diatithassos. And Zechariah 9:12 says, "Return to your fortress, O prisoners of hope." Louis Auguste Siparis, born June 1st, 1874, in Le Prêcheur, Martinique, in Panama. He went down in history as the only survivor of the 1902 eruption of Mount Pelée in French Martinique, because he was a quarrelsome bully, a brawler, and the police locked him into a deep semi-basement dungeon the night before, and they found him drunk. 28,000 of his fellow citizens lost their lives suddenly in the eruption of Mount Pelée in the Martinique. Auguste Kiperis, or Ludger Silberis, was a 20-year-old troublemaker living in Saint-Pierre on the French Caribbean island of Martinique. He was arrested for a fight and forced to do hard labor. However, near the end of his sentence, he escaped from his job and went to spend the night dancing in a bar. He was a vagrant and a bully, and although he surrendered himself to the police the next morning, they did not spare him and threw him into solitary confinement, a windowless dungeon that was a semi-underground bomb-proof ammunition depot and without windows. For this reason, he was the only survivor out of 28,000 inhabitants of his city. Now, but in January 1902, Pelée began to roar and groan. The volcano's Mount Pelée, that is a volcano. The volcano's activity began to increase, and by April, the first seismic tremors were felt. The sulfurous gases and ash drove snakes and insects out of the volcano, and about 50 people had snake bites from this, while animals were tormented by the bites of red ants, which had become enraged and aggressive. The French governor of the island of Martinique, however, did not pay attention due to the alarm bell and convicted the editor of the island's daily paper, who was worried to downplay the danger and write a reassuring article so the inhabitants could continue their daily lives normally. He even sent a handful of local leaders to the top of the volcano to inspect the state of the volcano. Although one scientist among them was a teacher from a local high school, they all returned and reported to the governor reassuredly the safety of St. Pierre is absolutely assured. Not all the inhabitants believed the reports, and some, obeying the unerring instinct of survival, fled, but none of them were saved because those who fled to save themselves were arrested by soldiers that returned to St. Pierre under strict orders from the governor, so that there would be no panic, and they shared the common fate of the rest. They were victims of the disaster. Now, within 3 minutes, all 28,000 inhabitants were lost. Mount Pelée suddenly erupted. On May 8th, the city was leveled by hot volcanic gases, about 170 degrees Celsius, and were estimated to have erupted at a speed of 650 kilometers an hour. Now, all but 2 people, one of those 2 survivors, a prisoner sitting in solitary confinement, as we said. On the day of judgment, it will not be good, the strong and the respectable, orderly householders who will survive, but those who have sought the mercy of God, which is their fortress, and who will probably be saved. Now, the Santorini eruption shaped history and led to the modern world. The ruins of the Minoan civilization, the collapse of which was caused by the Santorini Thera eruption. One of the most powerful eruptions in recorded history occurred in Thera, present-day Greek island of Santorini, sometime between 1642 and 1540 BC. It was 4 times more powerful than the gigantic eruption of Krakatoa in 1883. It destroyed the island of Thera, wiped out the thriving Minoan settlement of nearby Acroterio and all the surrounding islands. Thus arose the myth of the lost civilization of Atlantis, which was doomed by a natural disaster and sank into the sea. But beyond the myth, the Thera eruption had the greatest impact of any volcanic eruption in human history. Its consequences extended far beyond its time, with ripple effects and a chain causal connection that led directly to the world we live in today. And in addition to the immediate destruction of Thera and the surrounding islands, the eruption caused powerful tsunamis that devastated Crete. This greatly weakened the Minoan civilization of Crete, leading to its decline, putting it on the path to extinction. The Minoans were the greatest naval power in the Mediterranean, as well as the dominant power in the Aegean, including later Greece and the Hellenic world. Now, we've had a lot of eruptions, huge eruptions since then. We've had Mount Tambora, Indonesia, 1815, which has a height of 2,722 meters. The eruption occurred April 1815, considered the most powerful eruption in the last 10,000 years. It was so massive that it's estimated to have ejected 16 cubic kilometers of volcanic ash material into the atmosphere, significantly altering the climate, leading the world to what is known as the year without a summer in 1816. And the greatest eruption that was the greatest eruption in history of Mount Tambora, 1815, the year without a summer. The largest volcanic eruption in recorded history. Then we had eruption of Krakatoa volcano, 1883. The eruption was preceded by many smaller eruptions before the final massive explosion was heard as far away as Australia and Rodriguez Island, 4,850 kilometers away. It's one of the deadliest, most destructive volcanic eruptions in modern history. Of Mount Vesuvius in Italy, near Naples, near the Campi Flegrei supervolcano. Mount Vesuvius erupted 79 AD. The monuments of Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius are, of course, tourist attractions today. Vesuvius, perhaps the most famous volcano in the world, due to its eruption in 79 AD that destroyed the Roman cities of Pompeii and Heracleum. The eruption, sudden and violent, burying both cities under a thick layer of volcanic ash and pumice, instantly killing thousands of people who were unable to escape, the estimate being 16,000. Vesuvius is located near Naples, and we've had recent earthquakes, about 4.3 recently, basically the same days as Santorini has been having the 5.3 magnitude earthquakes. Today, Vesuvius remains one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world due to the large population living in close proximity. At least the last eruption occurred in 1944, and the volcano continues to be closely monitored by volcanologists to predict future activity. Is part of the Campi Flegrei volcanic arc and is considered a stratovolcano with a history of explosive sudden eruptions. Now, by midnight, Vesuvius was spewing a fiery column of death more than 20 miles into the air. At the same time, lava began to flow down its slopes in 6 great waves as the volcano spewed molten rock in a rapid flow that incinerated everything in its path. The lava did not reach Pompeii or Herculaneum, but it sent heat waves of over 550 degrees Fahrenheit through those cities, thus turned them into ovens, and of course many victims who had not yet escaped or had been suffocated by the fine volcanic ash. And the sources from History Collection. Of course, we know that something very strange is happening in the Aegean Sea, the Santorini volcano area. The whole of the Aegean has been described as the top, basically, volcanologist in the world. A Turkish professor who used to work for, who studied the Aegean geology for NATO, has claimed that the whole Aegean is basically a caldera of a supervolcano. Something that other people don't want to relate to because of the fact that they still want their tourist season to take place, whether it's Greece or Turkey. Please leave your comments about this, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.